Very good morning and welcome to Swish Amy session. I'm Sophie and today I have the honor of having Azmul Haque with us today. Azmul is the founder and managing director of Collyer Law LLC, a boutique Singapore law firm that specializes in representing emerging growth companies and the innovation economy. So fun fact, he has been recognized as one of the top 100 lawyers in Singapore by Chambers Asia Pacific and also Legal 500 Asia Pacific. So, good morning, Azmul. It's great to have you here with us today. So, before we kick things off, perhaps you'd like to tell us a little bit about your journey in the legal field and also how Collyer Law LLC came to be.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sophie. It's a pleasure to be here. Really grateful to kind of schedule this call because it's always fun talking about my journey. So one small correction: the top 100 list was actually not the two legal directories you mentioned. There was a third legal directory, which was Asian Business Law Journal. But that's just like, I'm being a lawyer.
No worries.
Just making sure, yeah, we have the right set of facts. So, quick insight into my journey. I think you can boil it down to two things. One is FOMO, and the other is YOLO. Those are the two reasons I set up the firm. I had spent 14 years in private practice, by 2015, which kind of dates me. But you know what I mean? Like, I had basically been there, done that in terms of working with firms in 3 different countries, 3 different cultures, certainly a variety of work. And I was slightly bored, you could say, because I could see exactly what the next 15 years would look like. And I was trying to, that was the YOLO part of it. I had kind of been there, done that the traditional way. And I wanted to see, I'd been a partner as well, and I wanted to see what it took to be a law firm founder, which certainly was not just difficult in general for professional services, but it's also very difficult in a competitive market like Singapore, where you have a huge number of lawyers and a large number of local and international law firms who are all jostling for some amount of market, market share, right, of the legal work that is available. So that was the YOLO part. I think the FOMO part was I had identified in my practice a real trend of emerging tech companies that were domiciling in Singapore, that were incorporating here, and were looking at raising venture capital funds from venture capital investors, many of whom also had a presence in Singapore. But there was no law firm that was well designed to suit that market segment. And I thought that was a real opportunity because I had seen, I think, the growth of these firms in the Silicon Valley. And I was familiar with, how those firms managed to tweak the business model to act for these early stage companies. And I was quite keen to do that in Singapore before I guess the next cycle, because these things always go in cycles. So I saw that cycle in 2014, and in 2015 I set up the firm because I thought we'll give it a shot and see how this turns out.
I mean, to be in trend, and I think that's a really good move that you made because you stand out for sure, because there's not much competition, right? So, establishing a firm like Collyer Law, right, must probably have its own sets of challenges as well. Being at the helm of Collyer Law, maybe could you actually walk us through some of the initial challenges you actually encountered, and also how you actually navigated through them?
Sure. So I think it boils down to two very important things. One is gaining client trust. Is critical for any law firm, any professional services firm, because we don't get business because we're located in a particular area, or like you'd go to a 7-Eleven because it's next door. You wouldn't go to a law firm because it's next door, right? You'd go to them for their reputation, for the fact that they're known for being experts at certain things, and essentially you trust them. So building that trust with clients is quite critical to building a law firm brand. And of course, if once they trust you, the good thing about the legal business is it's fairly sticky, right? Like if you have a problem and you've had a lawyer who's solved it for you, to your satisfaction, you wouldn't find a need to change. It's a lot of time and effort. So, right, you go back to the same doctor if you have a health issue, right? You don't scout around and find different doctors. So I think that I was clear that you had to build trust, from the get-go. And that was one very important part of the early days, the early years at Collier. The second really important, aspect of building a professional services business is to have the talent. And that's the human lawyers. I know we talk about AI in later in the conversation, but legal services, by and large, still need to be delivered by human beings who are qualified lawyers, who not only have to be admitted to the bar in Singapore, but they have to have a practicing certificate, which also gives them professional indemnity insurance, and there's a whole bunch of training. Lawyers have continuous legal education, CPD points that have to be obtained. Even at my age, I need some CPD points every year. So it's a very regulated industry, right? And so finding the right lawyers, finding lawyers who have, I think, not just the technical skills, but the personality, for this kind of business is a critical part of the early years. And I guess you could say, we hired for aptitude, but we looked for attitude. It was really important, to have people who think the same way or are able to be playing together as a team, as opposed to sort of being individually brilliant but not really collaborative. So yeah, those are just a couple of the aspects I would mention.
It's funny that you mentioned about having aptitude and attitude, and eventually, reaching altitude, right? So that's the whole, I guess, like, the whole process of like, getting that right formula. So I mean, like, why I'm actually bringing this up, because like I remember my dad always reminds me of that, as in like he always highlights that to me. So I'm like, I think that's a really good advice that you guys actually like, align with also. And I truly agree about having that relationship with your clients, of course, to build trust, which is actually very crucial. And despite the fact that we have this amazing technology around us, I think nothing beats having that, human touch also, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you actually need it as well. Even with the clients, we had a legal tech. I'll give you a quick anecdote just to explain this. We had a legal tech platform back in 2017 where we had a self-serve library of documents where the client could basically ask some questions and that would generate a document. This is way before generative AI, so it was, relatively low tech. But it would generate documents, and they could have that at a fraction of the price that the human lawyers would charge. It was owned by Collyer Law, so it's perfectly under the same umbrella. But we priced it differently because we said if there's a particular startup client that's not able to afford even our fairly reasonably priced legal services, then you could go to this platform, which was called First Counsel. And we realized that people who were potential customers who were trying out the platform and were tinkering around with it, often wanted to have a call with us, right? Even though you have a platform which serves you, then they want to have a call. So that the chat function was quite active. So they would send us a message, arrange a call. We had a way to arrange a call using, one of those tools that directly looked into my calendar and then picked out slots that were available. So we were using a lot of tech back then. And when they would speak to us, we would tell them, okay, if you want the legal service, unfortunately, we'll have to charge higher because the human beings involved are being paid a decent wage, in Singapore, etc. But if you're using the tech, it's much, much less costly, but you just have the tech, right, to deal with, right? You won't get us. And each and every time, these customers said, you know what, we'll go with the human legal services, uh, which I found really interesting because, it's like the level of trust, clearly wasn't high enough, right? That technology itself alone would solve my problems. And this is the key, right? The people approach lawyers not because they have to. There's no rule or direction saying you must go to a lawyer, but they have problems, legal issues, right? And they want a solution to those problems. Sometimes they need advice. Sometimes they need documentation to implement the solutions. Sometimes it's transaction support, like kind of taking them through a particular corporate transaction or legal issue. And each of those, my own view is the legal tech isn't sophisticated enough. It's not advanced enough to really replace humans or replace, I would say, well-trained human beings. I mean, for sure, you can outsource to ChatGPT something quite basic, to the caveat that it might completely hallucinate, and what you get as a result is, could be complete rubbish. But yeah, it can certainly do certain things that maybe a junior lawyer could as well. But you simply can't rely on it, right? And the reliance is the key. When you're engaging with a client, he's actually relying on the fact that, okay, you're a safe pair of hands.
Exactly.
You're not going to screw this up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why you get engaged, right? It's not your presence as a law firm, or it's not even how many years you've been around. Though I think that's a proxy for being trustworthy in a way. If you've been around for a long time, then yeah, you've done a good job, and you can be trusted. So anyway, I digress. Did I answer your original question?
Definitely, for sure. So just continue on to the next question, yeah? Okay, so for the years of experience that you've done the law, perhaps maybe you can actually share with us any memorable or any impactful like legal cases or projects you've actually spearheaded during your extensive career.
Yeah, sure. I mean, usually, I think some of these anecdotes are more for fire chat sessions where everyone is bound to confidentiality. But let me give you a couple of examples that I am able to talk about. So one I would mention is a joint venture that I worked on, where we advised a Myanmar telecom company in connection with a joint venture with a Japanese conglomerate. This is around the time that Myanmar was opening up, and they were handing out a lot of these telecom licenses. So the who's who of the telecom world, globally, had all submitted their tenders, to be shortlisted, and quite a few formed consortiums. So this was one of those consortiums. And I think what was memorable about it was, we were flying in for a day meeting, going to Rangoon for a day and then coming back the same day, because in those days, physical meetings were absolutely critical, to advance anything. And the discussions would happen face to face, with their lawyers and with us. And I remember when I was going through, the immigration at one of those sort of times that I flew across for a day, there was a immigration official who, so you had to pay a visa fee in US dollars. And I had given him, a slightly old, folded, but not crumpled note. And he looked at that and he just, gave it back to me with contempt and said, "I need new notes." This a lot. So it's not something I anticipated. So I had to go and withdraw money, brand new US dollars, or convert money. I don't remember. exactly.
Mhm.
But the immigration officials are, quite picky
Yeah,
about the
exactly.
notes that they receive. That's an interesting anecdote. I mean, another example I can give you is, a lot of our work is quite cross-border and multi-jurisdictional.
Mm-mm.
So there was a time that I had flown to San Francisco, actually on a business trip, and I had a bunch of meetings lined up, which is just to, not client work, just to exchange notes and sort of shoot the breeze a little bit. And one of those guys who had given me no advance warning of it, greeted me and then took me into his office, and then immediately there was a speakerphone, that was in the office, and on the speakerphone was a guy who was, based in one of the former Soviet republics. I won't mention which one. Uh, and he had, essentially they had a problem because there was a regulator in Singapore that had sent them a notice to provide information about a particular transaction that they had been involved with. This was during the year of the ICO, if you remember, the initial coin offering. And I think
Mm.
this company had complied with securities laws in Singapore in connection with that. So they received a notice, and they needed some answers. And I was the only Singapore lawyer that, this person in San Francisco knew, who was also a lawyer, but he had given me no advance warning. So I came in to meet him thinking, it's like a quiet chat, we just exchanged notes. And he brought me straight into his meeting room with the speakerphone on. And there was this, client asking questions and saying, "Hello, you are from Singapore. I understand you have dealings with MAS. Can you help me?" I
Wow.
was unprepared for that encounter. Yeah, in due course, we signed an engagement letter. We advised them. Fortunately, it was resolved. They
Mm.
they were not like in trouble after that.
Mm.
So yeah, that was a
Wow.
really interesting experience. Yeah.
That was interesting. As in, like, at least you were like, even though you were not prepared, but you were able to, like, quickly act, and be on your toes and have the information and be able to help resolve the problem, which is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of thinking on your feet. I think as a lawyer, because you're expected to analyze facts and apply the law, and then sort of come up with a view. And very often that view needs to be corroborated with documents and evidence, as they say. And you can always buy time to say you need you need to provide a more detailed response in due course. But sometimes clients are looking for a sense check. They're
Mm.
looking for, is this likely to be a problem, or is it not likely to be a problem, or is there a loophole? There's a particular requirement. There's nothing wrong with loopholes. They were legislatively,
Mhm.
I think there were very, very smart people who drafted legislation, right? So the fact that there is a loophole, the lawyers are not to blame. I think it just means that the intent of the legislation is such that, the loophole is genuinely an exception, right? Or
Mm.
in some cases, it's a statutory exemption. For example, for the securities law offering, there are some exemptions under the Securities and Futures Act where not all offerings of securities, need to have a prospectus or need to be filed with MAS. So it's really a case of really applying the facts to the law and then coming up with a reasoned argument as to what the outcome is likely to be.
Mhm. Thank you so much for sharing that. And like what you say, like loopholes, right? I mean, maybe it's already like intended to to have all these options, I guess. So maybe loopholes is not really the right word for it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like to the layman, lawyers
Mm.
are sometimes blamed for finding loopholes, like to help their clients avoid whatever they are trying to avoid. But like my view is, it definitely is not violating anything, right? I
Right.
think the whole point of loopholes, you call them exceptions or whatever, is you have the legislative intent is to cover a certain situation, and that situation doesn't apply across the board to everything, and therefore you have exceptions and exemptions.
Mm-hmm. All right. So basically, right, the legal industry like is also constantly evolving, right? Especially with the onset of emerging technologies, as you mentioned earlier on. And especially for you, like you are known for being always in trend and like keeping up with the latest trends. So how do you actually stay abreast of all these trends and also changes in the legal landscape?
Hmm. So I think as an organization, we certainly keep up with the latest technology tools that are available. So give you an example. I mean, we were using Zoom, and we were using one other video conferencing facility 2 years before COVID happened. So we anticipated, I think, the benefit of it, if you like, right? Because when you can't travel, but you still need to do face-to-face as far as possible, it's super helpful to actually have a tool like that. So we found out what our peers in other markets are doing, and when we see they're doing something that's going to enhance productivity or is going to get us to be better lawyers, we would absolutely adopt it. And so that's the first one is an example of I guess a general collaboration tool or a tool, the technology that's applicable to everyone, right, across all industries. And we adopt that quite easily. We've been using Microsoft Office 365 and all its features, all the various products within that since we started as a law firm. So, and everything's also on the cloud, which means you are quite nimble and agile. You don't necessarily need to have a large server room yourself and try and keep all the data yourself. And the acceptance of that, of the cloud as a model has been, I think slow, but I think now most large organizations think it's perfectly fine, really, to store your data in a cloud rather than on-prem. In terms of specific tools for the legal industry, I think I'll give you a couple of examples. One is in relation to research and maybe precedents, right, if you like. So precedents are simply documentation that has been prepared in a prior transaction or prior situation that is similar, but is obviously redacted, remove the references to the parties, etc. So we use subscriptions to such services that give you those. Of course, in my career over 20 years, I have a lot of my own documents that I've prepared myself, so I'm always able to rely on that. I think the ability to rely on generative AI to produce a document, I think jury is still out on that. So it's not, I mean, certainly it can produce things really quickly. Like if you wanted to, for example, do research on a particular very generic area of law, ChatGPT is powerful enough to pull together what it finds, either from the internet or from the data that it's been fed to produce something that looks very, very legitimate. But I think it's not reliable because it may hallucinate. For example, there was this case in the US where some lawyers were actually hauled up by the court for submitting ChatGPT researched, submissions that included completely fictitious cases that didn't exist.
Wow.
So it is dangerous to use it without obviously cross-checking it and getting somebody who really knows what he's doing as a lawyer to verify each and every one of those sentences or each and every one of those items of output. So I think it's still not the kind of technology that you can adopt on a mass scale, right, for the legal industry and be able to rely on it, in the same way that you would rely on Google to throw up answers that are relevant to the search that you're making. The problem is, how do you rank those hits, and how do you know whether that is relevant to your circumstances? I mean, so law, for example, is a jurisdictional thing. Each country in the world has its own parliament, which passes legislation, and then it becomes laws. And so, what might be permitted in a particular country may not be permitted in another country, right? So it is not straightforward. It's not the sort of thing like, digital marketing, right? I really envy those guys. It's the same across the world. It doesn't take you much to be an expert in digital marketing, with apologies in advance to those who are. And yeah, it's done, right? You can be a digital marketer anywhere in the world and service clients anywhere else in the world. You would probably need to know a little bit about the industry, a little bit about, the client you're serving, and that's it. You're off to the races. Not so much with the law. This is why, having expertise that is local is quite critical, because the best lawyer in New York isn't going to be familiar with and sufficiently knowledgeable about Singapore law in a particular area, right, to really be able to advise effectively.
Yeah. And I think speaking about I guess like maybe it's not like I mean you got a point there, because from a legal point of view, like I guess to fully depend on like AI or ChatGPT is quite risky, right? So I would think that maybe if you look at it as for efficiency, like ChatGPT like kind of churns out the research or the structure, and then you guys can probably like vet it through, so that at least you cut like the time to half, I guess. So maybe that's where it can come in for the legal space.
100%, 100%. And we are already doing that. I think I'm happy to disclose that it does save time in producing, I think items of work or research that, might take you a lot of time, but it still needs to be cross-verified.
Exactly.
And it needs to be, I suppose it needs to be cross-verified by somebody with the knowledge to spot those mistakes, right? So maybe you need a different kind of lawyer, is what I'm saying. So, and the difficulty is, you need experience, you need the 10,000 hours, and the 10,000 hour rule is definitely very applicable to the legal industry, to be an expert at something, at anything, right? And if you need those 10,000 hours to be a lawyer that is useful, with tools like all of these, how do you get there? How do you get to the 10,000? Because I have it, right? A lot of others, who are senior enough, you probably need to spend 10 years to get 10,000 hours under your belt. But how do the junior lawyers get it? If we are using tools like ChatGPT instead of junior lawyers, that's very dangerous, because that's an entire generation of lawyers not being trained, on a diet of good and challenging legal work to enhance their skills, so that they can, become experts at some point, and then maybe start law firms, like I did. So it's a dangerous thing. Like, you can't become an F1 driver without being a good driver first, and then maybe doing F3 after that, and then you graduate to F1. And how do we do that if we don't have the traditional system of training junior lawyers, as apprentices, who then work through the spend the number of hours that they need to move up the ranks until they're well and truly capable of rendering legal advice on their own.
Exactly. Like it's still important to have the basic foundation before, moving on. All right.
Absolutely.
So, it's been nice, you sharing about, your own personal journey. Like now, perhaps maybe you can actually move on to Collyer Law, your baby. Like, can you actually provide some insights into the future of maybe like legal services and how Collyer Law is adapting to meet, the changing needs of clients?
Sure. So I I will probably just touch upon the industry sector aspect of our, of our services. So we realized very early that you need to understand your client's business really well in order to advise on legal issues, right, that are applicable to that industry. Because, we're not talking about legal issues that are sort of secular enough that it applies across all companies, without exception, where most people are interested in the legal issues that are specific to their industry and given their business. So I'll give you an example. I mean, a tech company that is, using an idea and maybe it patents it, or maybe it doesn't. There's a software associated with it. A large part of its valuation and value is based on, this notion that it is going to scale, and that idea, along with great execution by a fantastic team, would mean the initial amount invested by venture capital is going to be returned, manifold times, 10x, 100x to the investors. So one very key assumption there is that, this company is able to comply with the law. Number two, like Uber, take an example. I think it was very clear Uber's strategy was we don't have to worry about compliance with the law because that's going to affect how quickly we grow. So we just grow at all costs. And if we get into trouble with the law, we'll just say sorry. That was their approach, like, really simplified version. And I think for us as lawyers advising, the emerging tech and innovation economy, as I like to say, we need to be 100%, familiar with the latest trends, developments, aspects of the industry that we're advising. Because without that knowledge, we wouldn't be able to anticipate what might be the legal regulatory issues, or what might be a sort of an industry-specific issue that affects, these clients. I'll give you a quick example. One of our clients, kind of uses data that they gather from public sources to, come up with profiles that are useful for certain types of influencer marketing. Right? So they're basically trying to match and saying, if your product is pearly white toothpaste, you need to use this particular influencer who's active on these social media channels because he or she has the best reach with your target audience, which might be, I don't know, adolescent children. So they were using that data from, they believed, from public sources. It turns out the social media platforms that had public profiles from which they were scraping the data had terms of use and privacy policy, just standard documents for any platform, which made it illegal for these companies, for anyone actually dealing with the platform. So anyone who's a user of that platform, I won't name the platform, but let's say it's Facebook. Anybody who is a user on Facebook is bound by the terms of use and privacy policy of Facebook. So any use of the data in violation of the terms of use and privacy policy could expose you to things, right, from the company, might expose you to litigation as well, if they thought it was important enough. And of course, this social media platform was protecting its stuff, right? They were basically saying, we've created this platform, and therefore we own all of the data on it, or at least we own it in exclusion to others like you. And so if you didn't understand exactly how our client's business worked, we actually wouldn't be able to advise on the risks. Correct. So that's one of the ways in which, we keep up to date, right, with an ever-changing world. As someone wise once said, the only constant is change. Right. So you've got to keep up with everything that's happening. It means a lot of reading, a lot of podcasts, in practice, a lot of also, kind of writing and presenting and speaking, because that helps you understand some of these legal issues or emerging trends much better.
And that's, I can imagine the load, I mean, the amount of things that you guys have to consume, it's crazy, right? And it's massive.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like Gen AI tool sometimes.
Yeah, so all this information, like try to generate something. But I
Yeah.
think it's good because at least you're, always learning, and I think that's very healthy. You keep you on your toes and always be like, very insightful, and you'll be able to like connect with the clients even better, which is also very important.
Yeah, 100%. And clients expect you to be knowledgeable about their industry.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's become a requirement. So yeah, it's fun. It's every day is a a new day of learning, and in a way, I wouldn't have it any other way because it kind of keeps your mind really razor sharp. And uh, yeah, the thing that I want to avoid is doing boring work. So
That is so true. And I think like, that's all part about mental health also, right? Yeah, just keeping your mind always busy and like, and also what do you call it? In the know. And we've actually heard about your initiatives about, you promoting diversity and also inclusion within the legal sector. Maybe perhaps you can actually elaborate on the importance of these factors and also any specific like initiatives undertaken by yourself or Collyer Law.
yeah, so I mean, to be honest, our impact or influence in relation to D&I initiatives is going to be small because of
Mm.
our the size of the organization. But I'm certainly a great believer in promoting diversity at the workplace, and also sort of inclusivity in terms of who we are hiring or who we are putting forward for certain positions, etc. So at one point of time, I'm not sure if this is still the case, we had lawyers from who were qualified in 7 countries, and spoke 12 different languages. I think this is quite quite difficult to do even in a very international place like Singapore. But we
Mm.
felt the business um, actually benefited from it in some way because all of our work is cross-border. All of our clients are very international, and having that very international uh, set of lawyers who also obviously had the relevant experience to advise on all the aspects and issues that we deal with was a big plus point
Mm.
in terms of us, not just attracting the work, but retaining the clients and definitely growing the reputation, right, of the firm as it's a very dynamic Singapore law firm, but very internationally minded, and with a lot of experience.
Exactly. And I'm sure being like, being a managing director involves wearing many hats. How do you actually manage to balance all these administrative like demands while staying rooted in legal practice?
Yeah, so I have a simple rule, the 3 Ds, as to anything I need to do, whether it's email or some other form of communication. The first is delete, if I don't think it's something I need to get involved with. The second is delay, and that's when I do need to think about a little bit and consult with other people. The third is do it. And really, there's nothing better than just getting something done rather than putting it on a to-do list. So I try to do that with all administrative aspects. Obviously, I can't use that method for legal advice. uh, so yeah, and otherwise, I try to, I suppose, be as nimble as possible, not create more work than is really necessary for anything administrative.
And I think that's super awesome advice. I think most of us would probably be able to use that, the 3Ds, especially myself. I think that's super useful. I will try to, implement it to my own, especially during work time. And given the hectic nature of your work, what are your personal strategies for maintaining like work-life balance and also your own well-being?
Yeah. So I think well-being is really important, mental, physical. We all have one body, right? Given to us. You don't have multiple, suits or places in which we can reside. So we really have to absolutely 100% take care of our bodies. And so I try and eat healthy and, go to the gym a couple of times a week. I also do yoga, try to catch up on maybe 15 minutes of yoga every other day. I think for mental health, I think it's really a question of what works for you. Some people can get some downtime, doing something that they enjoy. Some others might, get that downtime uh, in other ways. Like, so for example, I like the variety of activities, right? That to me is a way to get mental health,
Mm.
right? Constantly be engaged. I mean, not in a crazy way, but be engaged in different activities that you're still doing something. I'm not a couch potato. I'd be totally bored if someone said just, be in a couch potato and watch Netflix for a whole day. I still need to be doing something, but it can be relaxing. Like what you're doing could be a hike, could be a pub quiz, it could be a something involving reading history, which I really enjoy, especially I think the history of human migration, which is quite interesting. So I that's kind of how I keep it all together. Uh,
And I think that's a very interesting side of you that you just revealed to us. I mean, not just about being about, talking about legal stuff. I think that's a very good way of like balancing your life and also both work and your personal life. Perhaps because we're gonna go down to the last two questions for you, because we actually be closing out today's session in a bit. So maybe you can actually touch on some interpersonal aspects that's required for building a successful career in the legal field. Perhaps maybe you can share some of those essential skills or qualities that individuals should actually cultivate for success in both legal and entrepreneurial spheres.
so, yeah, I saw this LinkedIn post the other day, and I think LinkedIn is also a treasure trove of advice for younger lawyers and just generally anyone who's looking to grow professionally. And this was really about, I think it was something Barack Obama said. He said, I was looking for somebody who could just take care of the problem that I had, right? He wasn't looking for I think somebody hugely intelligent or with a lot of fancy degrees and titles, simply looking for somebody who said, I got it, I'll take care of it. And that is something I think younger people in the workforce should 100% adopt, right, as a mantra. Because I think with older folks, or with people who are more experienced, in terms of whatever industry they're in, right, they have multiple, I think maybe 100 problems, right? They have to deal with 100 things that they have to navigate. So I think what we are, from my perspective, what we are looking to really achieve or find is members of the team who have the attitude, right, and who have that sort of drive to say, I'm going to take care of it. I'll figure it out, right? None of this is rocket science, right? Legal services isn't rocket science, and I'm sure digital marketing certainly isn't. So I think the question is, are you able to, have that ownership to say, I hear you, this is what you want done, I'll take care of it. And that will really, really benefit, younger folks in their career. The trust that is reposed on you has to be repaid, right? Essentially, so it's reposed in you for a reason, and having this attitude is a really good way to build that trust with your superiors, with your seniors at work, etc.
I think that's really go like really, really like useful advice, which I think a lot of us, could actually have it as like reminders. Super, super important. And I think it's like what you say, it's not rocket science. It's not something that, you have to like think about, working on. It's just simply just building that trust between yourself and your employer and be able to be, dependent, right? For your
Yeah.
employer to be dependent on you. I think that's super awesome advice. And also maybe the last question from myself. Could you also share your insights on the role of mentorship and also networking in fostering professional growth? I think it'd be great to hear some tips for building meaningful professional connections.
Yeah, I mean, it's super important. Mentorship is a fairly new, relatively new term that's been, I would say, bandied around a lot in maybe in the last decade. It wasn't something that, when I started my career in the early aughties, it wasn't something that was really available, right? If in the way that is available today. So your mentors were simply, you know, had to be people who are either within your family or at school or college. And then when you entered the workforce, your mentors would have to be your employers, right? The ones who are supervising you, the ones who are working with you closely. And that's largely because it was difficult to make networks outside, quite easily. You didn't have social media. You certainly didn't at those junior levels. Nobody had really an expectation that they would get a mentor who would be interested, right, in your career, or interested, because it's a quid pro quo relationship. There must be some benefit, to the mentor, tangible or intangible, as to why they're doing it. And I've seen a proliferation of coaches, life coaches, career coaches, coaches for mental health, etc., who are, I think it's an extension of the whole mentorship thing for people who are not able to find mentors who they know, or who on a one-on-one basis. I guess coaches are another way of helping you navigate work, career, life, otherwise. So it's definitely important, but I think it's important to find the right mentor. Don't just go and sign up with, anyone, who doesn't quite understand your industry, your sector, your professional journey so far, your cultural background. Sometimes that's quite important. It's far more important than picking a personal trainer. And picking a personal trainer is tricky enough, right?
Yes.
I think you have to be, kind of very careful who you choose as a mentor.
Thank you once again for the amazing advice. I think that's also equally important. So we have actually reached the end of our AMA session for today. Thank you so much, Azmul, for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with me today. And I think it's been an amazing session. Thank you so much for sharing your golden advice, and also sharing like really great insights about yourself, your journey, and also about Collyer Law. Looking forward to collaborate more with the company. And yeah, I think yeah, looking forward to having more chats with you in our office, because we share the same physical office also. So thank you so much once again as well.
Sure. It's a pleasure, Sophie, and thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure indeed. Thank you.